Hello everybody. We are on good old Gelvin Valley for Farming Simulator 15, a map prepared by Wild Wild Wes. We are also in the middle of bailing on top of the world. Well, we're not bailing just yet. Unable to... Oh, come on. I need to get a little bit closer here. Set up the fault. Oh yeah, he's going to try to go up this tractor's tailpipe. We have a little ways to go, and we're going to head off now with our baler in tow. While we've had a little extra time here after finishing fertilizing all of our fields as we await harvest, here now it's getting kind of towards the afternoon in game, so we'll have just enough time to finish baling these free grasslands, if you will, kind of up on top of this mountain. Both of them we had to go up extremely high. So we had to be patient while we pulled our heavy machinery from the farm uphill. Yeah, shoot, we're going uphill now, but at least this is a more gradual route than the one we're going to be on shortly. Yep, he's coming along on the beautiful map of Gelvin Valley. Right now we're kind of climbing the far side of the valley. Soon we'll be on the other side. Hopefully get this finished up, and kind of as mentioned in a previous episode, we're gonna leave the bales up there probably until we get through harvest and we're baling everything in our fields, and then we'll lease a trailer and go pick all these up. Actually is, I think on it now, we probably leased a square baler for our general crops. So we'll maybe do that again. It is just so much easier to run the square baler because you don't have to stop every time a new bale is created just to let it out the door. But we have a round baler. That's one that we started the game with. It's one Wild Wes provided as opening equipment, and we've never sold it. Probably should sell it and see if I can cover some of the shortfall that I have in game here. Otherwise, I think when we're done up here, we're going to fast forward the game, which I'll try to do off cam, and get everything ready for harvest. Go get that header that I like for the combine and warm up our little hillside and see if we can make a few bucks. Or excuse me, what would it be over here in you case? Pounds. That's what you all have. Oops. Can't even stick here. Oh, is he still coming? Oh yes, he is. I love this time of year. We're just past the Thanksgiving holiday that we have here in the States. And there's a sweet spot kind of between, maybe a little before Thanksgiving and leading up to Christmas and New Year's. There's just a time period in here where things are much lighter in my occupation at work, and there's just more things to do with the family, and just a wonderful time of year. Shoot, there's a song about it being the most wonderful time of year, especially as you approach Christmas. But it does give me a little bit more time to do things like, well, farm. So I'm kind of enjoying it in here, but there are always, my occupation. I know I've mentioned many times that I'm an accountant, and, in our accounting firm, we help our clients, prepare their taxes, their annual tax returns that they turn into the government. Some of them are businesses, and they need financial statements prepared, either for absentee owners or that get showed to banker, those kinds of folks. And so most of that has already been done through the year. We're trying to pick up the pieces and get a few of the stragglers done kind of before the year closes out. And then there's, always a few special projects, I guess you could call them, that just come along. And I've had a couple here of late. And it's interesting because, well, it's interesting to me. You may find it just strange. But on the same day, we got a call from two different entities. They aren't our regular clients. One is a club, a not-for-profit club, if you will. Actually, it isn't very far from where I live. And it's a place, let's just say, where Americans can exercise their Second Amendment right and target practice. And actually, it isn't just about guns. I mean, I think it's for fishing club too, and some of those kinds of things. And they had a long-standing treasurer. I think he passed away, and when I say long, he had been in this position for maybe 20, 25 years, something like that. And so they've had to do a transition. And it's common on a business, people move around, they retire, they pass away, whatever. And so other folks are needed to come in and help fulfill the role. And it's hard, when someone passes away suddenly, to just, step inside someone else's shoes and not necessarily have whatever's in their head. Let me go to the other. I think I can. Coming on up the hill. It's hard to just take over from someone, let alone when they pass, and you also learn things, I guess, about yourself when these kinds of things happen. This is a small organization, and it's common with not-for-profits, especially, to have resources we all know are scarce. And so any entity, I don't care who you are, you want to use them as wisely as you can. You don't want to waste them. But particularly for a not-for-profit, you want to make sure that every penny you get, if you can, goes towards the mission of what you do. And so you don't always spend maybe as much money as you should on things like infrastructure and administrative type functions. Those tend to kind of take the back seat to more pressing matters, if you will. And these other things don't become important until maybe something happens that's bad, and then everybody says, oh, if we'd only had these policies, procedures in place. Just saying those two words about makes a lot of people's eyes glaze over. Policy and procedures, like, well, what does that mean? What good is it? It's just two buzzwords or what have you. So, but anyway, this guy passed away, and they're looking at the organization, and they're realizing they have no historical data, and the guy's never been audited. They initially asked us if we could perform an audit, but when I got out there to visit with them and learned that they don't have any data. You can't audit anything if there's no historical data or substantiation available. The whole idea of an audit is to look at the underlying support and to be able to tell what was there, look at receipts and checks, and there was just a lot of this that wasn't available. So, when you trust someone for a long time to take care of something, and even if they're perfectly ethical and they do everything right, but let's say they don't keep adequate records, it kind of can leave an organization in the lurch. If someone has to, if you get run over by a bus and someone has to take your place and get inside your head to figure out, where things sit. So that's kind of the position they're in at the moment, and so we're going to go in and maybe help them with a few procedures of some things we can audit, and try to maybe help them put some better practices or adopt better practices going forward, where they don't have this kind of issue again. As bad of a word as it is sometimes, and the word I'm thinking is accountability. Probably none of us really enjoy being accountable to anybody or having to answer for what we do. Uh, any of us who work for someone else, well, really, I don't care if you work for someone else or if you don't. I mean, we all have someone in our life to whom we are accountable, whether it's a spouse or even your kids. I mean, if you have them, you're accountable in many ways to your kids, wanting to raise them to be decent or whatever. And also the employer-employee relationship, it's with clients and their expectations, and whether it's in the type of industry I'm in, and doing the, not necessarily being a fiduciary, but just doing the best you can to make their situation as good as you can. We all are accountable to someone, and accountability, when something hits the fan and things go wrong, it seems like the human instinct is to look for someone to blame. I mean, that's like number one. Let's first figure out who to blame, and then we'll set about fixing the problem or seeing if there is one. It's just kind of funny how we are as humans. But that's one area where accountability becomes really important, when you have policies and procedures and internal control structure at a company. If someone has too much power or too many things they can do without checks and balances, they may be perfectly ethical, but if something happens, everybody's going to look at them and point the finger. Because it's like, well, nobody else is touching it. You're the only one touching it. Therefore, you must have done something wrong. And so, accountability really is a helpful thing for people when they can involve others kind of in the process. And maybe it's kind of like a shared type responsibility, if you will. And just to prevent these kinds of things from happening. So, we're going to go in there and hopefully help them out a little bit and help them adopt some practices. And like I started to say, it was ironic that on the same day, two non-clients, if you will, called, basically asking the same question or wanting the same type of service. And the other group that called, it was a for-profit business, and much to my surprise, I mean, they didn't call him a controller or internal account, but that's basically what he was. He had been there even longer, something like, over 30 years. So it's kind of refreshing to hear that. You don't hear so much anymore, such long-term loyalty in employees. It seems like people are much more mobile today, much more likely to move around. So that was kind of cool in and of itself. But kind of similar, there was things that this person did over time and some of the control that they had, that this group is kind of wanting to have someone come in and say, hey, we could probably be doing better on this than we have been, and it's maybe high time that we put in some better procedures. If you have an ethical person in there, it shouldn't be a problem as long as they're reasonably competent. But like I was talking to him tonight, you just never know. The person that you think is perfectly ethical and nice, upstanding family man, or whatever adjective you put to the person, they may be the one that steals you blind. And it's, when it comes to stealing or fraudulent activity, it's a lot of times it's always the person you never imagined or thought would cause you harm that is the one that does it. Sometimes I think we go into our adulthood with this boogeyman mentality, and it's only people that, whatever our biases say, someone that looks a certain way, as if, you see the devil's horns and pitchfork, carried by people that are bad, and you just don't. Most of the time, people are just people, and two people that look nice and maybe wearing a three-piece suit. One's a thief and one's not. So that's where internal controls are necessary. Sometimes we'll tell our clients, trust is no internal control. That's a lot of times what people will say. It's like, well, I trust this person. And you know what? That's wonderful. You shouldn't hire anybody for anything if you don't feel you can trust them. But the trouble is you can't trust. There's nothing to rely on. That isn't a form of accountability just because you trust somebody. And sometimes, relationship with people, especially if it's long-standing, assumptions can be made, and companies can have stuff stolen from them. And I'm trying to remember if I've had an episode in here about fraud before. It's not something I've run into a lot of in my career, but it periodically comes up, and those are the things that Hollywood will trumpet when they make their films and all that. But I would say most of the ones I've encountered in my working career, it's, I don't know, pretty humdrum stuff. It's someone who is down on their luck, or, kind of just like they told us in school. Some of this, it seems almost cliche. Someone with a gambling problem, or someone who just purchased a new car or something brand new, and you look at what they do and say, there's no way you make enough to justify buying that, or afford it. And not in all cases, but you'd be surprised how many times, when someone gets a new toy, it may mean that they were on the take. Now, of course, there's other extenuating circumstances. Maybe they just got an inheritance, or maybe that their spouse is blessed with a really good job and so they can afford something the rest of us can't. But I just, thinking back over a number of incidences where we've encountered fraud in our accounting practice among our client base, a lot of times it's those cliche things that where it was caught. I think of two cases right now. One of them was a woman that had a gambling problem, and for her, this is where you could say good people, otherwise good people, get themselves in trouble. You talk about trust. Who couldn't trust a grandma type? And yet I've seen grandma types, old women that should know better, old people, seasoned citizens. I've seen several of them in my working career, grandmas who stole money from the people they were working for. And one of them had a gambling problem. I don't know if she went to Vegas or if it was just a local casino or just what the deal was. But if you assume that from the moment that she's an otherwise good person, that wouldn't steal, where it can happen so easily is, they'll get themselves in trouble at Vegas or at a casino, and maybe they'll be successful for a while, and then they lose some money, and so they need some more money to kind of recoup the losses. And in their mind, they're always saying, I'll win it back, and then I'll go pay back the company that I just stole this from. That's kind of the justification that, otherwise good people will have in their mind. I think in the fraud triangle, they call that attitude rationalization or something like that. Because most of us, if you're a decent person, you can't just go steal from somebody and live with yourself. And hey, I realize there's corrupt people out there who are able to do just that. But I'm talking about ordinary people who are otherwise decent. We wouldn't want someone to steal from us, and therefore we wouldn't turn around and steal from someone else. It's just, it would bother us to do that. So in order to do it, I think what's the fraud triangle? It's rationalization and opportunity, and I forget what the third one is. It'll come to me in a moment. But most of us maybe are fortunate, where we have enough to eat, we have food, clothing, shelter. We maybe have never experienced what it feels like to have your back against the wall and no choice, or the perception of no choice, And so it's like, boy, if I don't do this, my family's going to be harmed. I'm going to be harmed. I'll pay it back. At some point, I know things will work out. And, so goes the frail human mind trying to justify taking a particular action that we know isn't ethical. But that's how easy it can happen. And I think that's probably what happened maybe with some of these grandmothers who you would think would know better. But someone, like I say, they stole, and like this particular person, I'm pretty sure she had a gambling debt or something that had to be paid, and so took it from a not-for-profit in that case. And it particularly hurts with a not-for-profit, because like we mentioned a little bit ago, resources are scarce. Plus, what does a company or a not-for-profit in this case, what do you do if you catch or if you discover that someone has stolen from you? What it means is donors who gave you money, their money was effectively stolen. So what do you do with this? If you prosecute the person that did it, it all becomes public information, and that information gets out, and donors will hear about it, and they'll say, oh, I'm not going to donate here, if my money's just going to be lost to fraud, or if this happens. I mean, people are funny that way and very fickle. When they hear the ad, it's like, oh, they don't blame the person a lot of times. They blame the company maybe for not having good enough processes, and it's like, well, if they're not going to pay attention to this, then I'm not going to give them my money. Right or wrong or whatever, that's a lot of times what people can think. So when something like this happens, a lot of times the not-for-profit and even a for-profit company is reluctant to prosecute because of what can happen to their name out in the community once that all becomes public. It's kind of a counterintuitive thought, but a lot of times that's, there's fraud that happens and it just never sees the light of day because the company takes their lumps. They will sever employment, of course. They may work with, their insurance company to see what coverage may be available. But even working with an insurance company can be dicey when these things happen, because the insurance company may say, you may not prosecute this person, but we're going to do it. We're going to take them to court, to get them to pay. Because, the insurance company may be on the hook for whatever the policy is for, this kind of bad behavior that a company tries to protect themselves. So even there are limits going to an insurance company. They aren't going to just pay. They're also going to they will, assuming it's in the policy, but they're also going to evaluate their options to hold this person accountable or to somehow recoup their losses. So yeah, it's just one of those things. And a lot of times, what do we say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's kind of a funny little saying, but a lot of times it's true. And it starts with, what word? This is steep. Starts with the policies and procedures that a company or organization puts in place to protect its resources. And it isn't always a fun area of study or have a lot of pizzazz. And unfortunately, internal controls, they cost money. Policies and procedures cost money. And it isn't so much that the cost is saying or declaring, hey, we got this policy. The cost is living it. And it doesn't do anybody any good to have a book full of policies if nobody is following them. That's ridiculous. But to actually follow them takes time, it takes resources of the company. So it's always a balancing act for any entity as to what controls they have, because they come at a cost. So anyway, this will be a fun little project. Hopefully we can fit in here around the holidays at where I work. And I thought I would bore you all with it. Boy, this is just hardly crawling up the hill. There we go. I think we just got our windroad. So I'm going to grab the baler and we're going to see if the script that I made and put in this map some time ago still works. Namely that namely that the bales stay on the hill. I know the first time I ran this round baler in game, it drove me nuts because every bale I made, it was like an unseen hand just kind of escorted them to the bottom of the hill. And before I came up here, when you look down here, it's incredibly steep. That's the edge of the map right over here. So if any bales tumbled down that way, they'd head off into the abyss, and that would be that. You can still, I got a bale right away almost. You could still maybe do something with them in the save game file. But once it slips off the edge of the map or through the map, it keeps going and there's nothing that stops it. It's kind of like falling forever. So, yeah, sometimes you can pull open your save game file and you'll see a bale and you'll see the y-axis, which is up and down. The driving across the map here is the x and the z-axis, but straight up, that's up into the sky or down below the ground, that's the y-axis. Sometimes you can pull open the save game and you'll see an object, a bale or whatever, and it'll be like at minus 50,000 meters or whatever, and there you have one that somehow slipped under the mesh of the map and headed off into the abyss, never to be seen again. And sometimes, I'll go in and do an edit and get it back topside on the map, but yeah, you can also delete them out if you don't want to bother with them at that point. So we're kind of on a slope right here, so yeah, look at that. It's sitting right there as if it has a bunch of Velcro on it to keep it attached to the hill. It'll be even more noticeable once we get out over the main part of the hill over here. Alright, it's at least picking up the... It's a little flat top up here and then incredibly steep over the side. Let's see if I can pick up this little bit. Get it. Yeah, we would just be losing them over the edge if I hadn't put that in here. Although I don't know that it's too steep here. Is it? Kind of hard to tell when I placed valves kind of top down. Oh, it isn't too steep here actually, but it's still, I would bet money it would still slowly roll over to the edge and then eventually be gone. So it's good that we have the script to hopefully keep all of our product, and especially when we head down over here now, we are getting into areas we probably shouldn't even be driving. We don't make much on these. In this version of the game, grass wasn't really like any other crop, where you could fertilize it, where you could rip it out easily. It was like part of the underlying ground, and I think later versions started treating grass as a crop like any others versus just kind of a roadside thing. Alright, now we are definitely on a steep portion here. And hopefully, yeah, it's still staying there. Wouldn't it stay there in real life? I know it's steep, but it seems like the bottoms of these things would flatten a little bit. I don't know if it'd go downhill. Maybe it'd have to be turned sideways. What do I know? I guess there was a little piece kind of down over this. Oh man, I feel like I can tell the tractor wants to go. It wants to just go plunging down, and so I'm feeling it trying to hold the thing back as it goes downhill. And this is going to be steeper all get out over here too. Kind of pushing the envelope on what I run our little machine through here. But I still think it looks pretty cool. What do you all think of this? I think there's a cool hill over here, and Well, you all know I'm enamored with this map. I don't know how many 100 episodes I have on here now. 100 and... What is this? I don't even have my notes in front of me. 140-ish. I'm still loving it. Alright, we're about ready to crank out another one. Let's crawl up the hill. There we go. There's another one. Ah, I back up just a little bit and it wants to go downhill. Hang on. Yeah. Here we go. So far as I'm aware, we don't have any rain in the forecast. I keep wondering where my little mod went to. I used to have this one that would show some text in the upper right corner as to just how long we had until the next weather pattern hit. It was kind of like the ultimate weather forecaster. It would tell you down to the second how long you had to get that crop in before the rain literally showed up. I thought it was pretty handy, but I know probably in real life we'd never have that kind of accuracy. In fact, I'm positive we wouldn't. So I'm about pleased to be done with this outer round, which is the most treacherous, so then I can focus kind of on the interior. I'll be curious to see how many bales we get. Oop. Yeah, we're getting a little flatter up here. Oop. Hear the wind blow just like we would on a tall hill like this in real life. Probably should have used GPS when I did the winter owing there, but oh well. Not sure what you would do in real life if you ever were stupid enough to try to cut hay on a hill like this. And there we have it. First round is done. So, well, I think everybody heard my good friend Atomic 67's timer that he gave me went off, my little cow timer. And so that means we've reached the end of 30 minutes, and it's time for me to quit boring you all. So I will bid you farewell on another episode. Thank you for spending some time with me, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.